Today we're going to talk about doing some minor upkeep on your chainsaw before you start going out cutting your firewood for the year. It's probably been setting close to a year since maybe the last time you've used it to cut firewood, so we're going to see about what this in here might need to get ready to go. So the first thing I think we need to do is we'll take and look and make sure that our recoil rope doesn't have any frayed places or anything that might break. It wouldn't be anything any worse if you'd get out into the woods and you go to start it and then the rope would break on you, and then you don't have maybe the right tools or maybe not even a piece of rope to put in there to rewind a new rope in, so your day is basically finished before you've even got started. So we've looked at the rope, and we'll go ahead and look at the air filter on this. Look at everything there and make sure it doesn't need cleaned or replaced. And these just lift right off here on the Husqvarna. This here has got the quick latch here for the air filter. We'll just pop it there off and pull the air filter off, and we'll look at the element in here. This in here looks pretty good. We might take a little paintbrush or something that you have and just kind of brush it off. You can use air. If you do use air, just have the minimum amount of air blowing out of your air hose if you got compressed air, and kind of blow across the element. Don't get in real close to it because you can force that sawdust in there, and you don't want to blow sawdust up in the inside part of that because it can suck that down into the carburetor, and then there you got more issues that way. So that there, like I said, looks pretty good. We'll look around here, look at the fuel lines and make sure nothing is leaking. You can push on the primer bulb and make sure it is, and will pump fuel, that it does not leak. When they do set over time, the primer bulb can get cracked because of the ethanol in the fuel where it's been setting. The fuel lines can crack and get brittle, cause leaks as well, and they will not run and be hard to start. So this one here, everything is hooked up, looks good there. So we'll take a look at the spark plug here, see what it looks like, see if it might need to be replaced. This one here, it looks pretty good in that. It's burning pretty clean. We'll take and see about maybe check the gap on that, and then we'll put it back in. Look at that there, put it back in there, make sure it's tight. We'll put our air filter back on. Put it back on there, lock it into position. We'll go ahead and spin it around and look, make sure our decompression valve, this saw does have a decompression valve. That way when you do go to start it, you'll push that decompression valve in, and once it starts, it should pop out on its own. We'll make sure it does not have a lot of leakage or anything around there. We'll make sure that it is not stuck, that it will move in and out by just pulling it. If it stays in and will not pop out once it starts, the saw won't have much power because you're losing a lot of the compression out the decompression valve. The springs here that the handle's all set in for the anti-vibration, everything is in place. They're not broke, they're tight, nothing loose. The saw itself is nothing leaking as far as oil and gas caps. And if you do have build up around your fuel caps or your oil cap, wipe that off before you take those caps off, and that will keep that debris from getting down in either the fuel tank or your oil tank, and then plugging up the screen in the oil tank, and then or plugging up the fuel filter, fuel tank as well. So this chain here is really loose, and they've been running it loose. The bar is burnt right here because of running that loose. When you've got it on wood, that the chain does not want to ride in the groove of the bar like it should, so it's rocking, moving back and forth, and that will roll that bar. So make sure you keep your chain, you don't want it as tight where you can't move it by hand, but it does need to be tight enough where that will not roll in the bar groove and then roll that bar. If you have a saw and you notice It's got a good sharp chain on it, and you get in that log and it doesn't want to go through the cut, and it feels like it's wanting to rock back and forth. Feel the edge of the bar and see if you can feel where the bar has rolled up. There will be an edge. This should be smooth past the edge of the bar. If you feel an edge there, that bar is rolled, so you'll need to knock that off and just take the bar plumb off the saw, lay it flat, and you can use just a hand file and just kind of go over that edge and knock that edge off of that bar where it is rolled up, and then put it back on the saw. Also, where if you do have the bar off or you're going to put a new chain on, you can take and clean the groove of the bar out. You will get a lot of buildup over time. The oil and the real fine sawdust can build up down in there, and it will not let the oil get to the chain like it needs to and go plumb around the bar of the oil. So take a small thin screwdriver if you got your chain off and run down through there, or just take compressed air and blow that groove out. You can also, if you want to flip your bar, you can flip the bar over and use, which would have been the top side, you can use it on the bottom. You can do that as well to get more life out of longer life out of your bar. So this here, we will see about tighten this here up, and when you tighten your chain up, you should be able to just pick it up a little bit out of the bar, and you still should be able to spin the chain by hand. When you grab the chain by hand to spin it, pull it in the direction of what the chain moves. If you try to pull it backwards and the chain gets caught, you can actually take and get cut with the chain, because the chain's just really sharp. So you can take and lose some skin off your fingers pretty good there if the chain gets hung up, if you're pulling it back towards the saw instead of going forward. Most of these bars is a roller tip bar. They do have bearings in here. There is a grease gun that you can buy. We carry them up in our parts department there, and there's a little hole here on the end of the bar on both sides. So you can take this grease gun and put the tip of that in that hole, push down on it, it'll come back up, the grease gun will, it'll reload, and then the grease you'll actually see the grease come between the bar and the chain. You have enough in there that way, and then you can flip it back or go back to the other side where the small hole is on the bar, which it's on the bottom side of the bar right here, and do it as well. And then you can see that grease has come out. So we got grease in there. You can take and rotate a little bit if you'd like, and maybe give it another little shot. But that will keep that grease, it gives more lubricant into that bearing and on that bar to keep that sprocket moving freely, not locking up, and then you have to replace bar because of premature wear from not being enough lubricant. But these little grease guns will last a long time. This is just what this is specifically for, is to grease the bars on your chainsaw. A lot of guys will file their own, if they feel like that they can file their own chain. The right size file for the chain with the guide on it. The guide will have the angle of the chain on there of what your chain is. And you'll go, the cutters, you can tell that if they're facing this direction here, you'll sharpen from this side. You want to take the stroke of the file in one direction. Do not go back and forth. Just sharpen in one direction. I personally, when I sharpen by hand, I try to find the worst tooth on there. And if it takes 5 strokes with the file or 6 strokes to get a good angle back on that tooth, and it's a good sharpness, then if it takes 5, 6, 7, 8 strokes, then do that with every tooth that you sharpen. Cutting one way or the other, it tends to cut straight down through instead of, like I said, pulling to the right or to the left when you're trying to cut into bigger log and that. So we do have the gauges that you lay across the top of the cutters to check the depth of the chipper there on front of the tooth. Lay that on there, and then you can check to take a flat file and then cut that down to get the right depth. That way you're not taking too much wood out and bogging the saw down, or that way you're getting an equal amount of what that chain is capable of handling if the depth gauge by cutting that chipper down. So, and then you're not hung up stopping the chain and all that. After you've done that, we've tightened, let's say we tighten the chain and that, get it up to proper, take in and clean this out. If you've got your bar and chain off, take this side cover, when you take that off, blow all that out, clean all that out, clean all this old debris and stuff out in here, because all that buildup, it's hard and that, and then it keeps the oil from getting on the chain like it's supposed to, and it's just going to take and make the saw work harder trying to pull that chain because the chain's running dry without any of the proper lubrication. So take and clean all this debris and this old oil and sawdust, blow all that off there and clean that up well. Make sure that your air vent, the vents here on the recoil side here, make sure that is all cleaned out too as well, because it pulls a lot of air in there, and that's how the saw cools itself, is to pull that air in. So make sure you keep the debris and all that cleaned off of there as well. There's some helpful hints. Let you go into the woods and be able to use your chainsaw and maybe, you know, get you a truckload of wood or whatever for the day, and you're not having to work on your saw if you take and prepare before you leave to go out in the woods for the day, and that way you can get your wood in, not having to stand there and work on your saw all day. So, and then if you need anything other than something that you can't take care of, as always, we take and service what we sell here. So, and you can bring it in and we'll see what we got. We've got plenty of parts in stock, new chains and bars. If you need a new chain and bar, we have if you got a Husqvarna saw, we've got chains and bars that it fits the Husqvarnas. We've got the Oregon line up there as well that fits not only the Husqvarna, but the other brands of saws that you might have as well. We do have a different length of bars and chains in the Oregon line. And then we do sell the different size file and guides up there, so you can sharpen your own chain if you feel like wanting to do that. We do handle the bar oil, the 2-cycle oil mix as well. So come in and see us.